Now I'd like to welcome Dr. Marek Chodakiewicz. He currently serves as a professor here at IWP, where he holds the Kosciuszko Chair of Polish Studies. He also leads IWP's Center for Intermarium Studies. So let's welcome Dr. Chodakiewicz.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for swarming IWP to hear sad news. I will be talking about border drugs and remedies ever so briefly in an incendiary manner because I don't have a security clearance. So I can get you depressed. Well, as far as the border is concerned, no border, no security, and no sovereignty. You need a border to be able to claim jurisdiction over an area. That's just an abstract story. Our border is wide open, in particular in the south. There is a wave of intruders, and no goodniks take advantage of the mess of the swarm coming in to bring in their business, in particular drugs. I'm concerned with all drugs, but fentanyl seems to be the most deadly one. All you need to do is look at the death toll. More or less every 10 days, we lose as many Americans as on 9/11. Every 10 days or so. And there is no outrage. Hi. She's the best. After my wife, of course. So it's staggering. Yes, I know that most of the victims are in the flyover country, so who cares? Or inner city, so who cares? But nonetheless, these are fellow Americans and I care. It's a crisis situation. In a way, to a large extent, it's China's war on the United States. China's war. The Chinese talk about, unofficially at least, they talk about the revenge for opium wars. I beg to differ. The Dutch and the British supplied opium to port cities of China. The United States was a latecomer and tried to penetrate up rivers. None of this was American government or American people voting. This was private enterprise. Privateers in a way. But it doesn't matter. Whatever works for Chinese propaganda will be used. 100 years of humiliation and death. China is out to avenge itself. Never mind, and you will not find it in Chinese propaganda, that the deliveries were made to Chinese elites, which chose to make money by poisoning the Chinese people for 100 years, killing them for 100 years. Not just opium wars, it was a war on Chinese people themselves by the Chinese elites. They made a lot of money for a very long time. That is not the case here in the United States. It's China's war against Americans. In practical terms, what we see is China supplying chemical ingredients to its deputies, cartels in Mexico. And China also supplies technical equipment, for instance, mixers, in one instance I've heard about. Mixers are produced in the United States. Some of them are stored in warehouses in California and Nevada. Others are shifted to Mexico as legitimate pharmaceutical mixers. Then the product is made, fentanyl, and then it floods back over the border. The Chinese work in particular with the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels. Those cartels in turn have subcontractors. I'm interested as a California chauvinist who grew up in San Francisco Bay Area in the Tenderloin district. It's the Guatemalan gangs. When you hear about psychotic episodes among the homeless, it is not just the liberal government of San Francisco. It is the Guatemalan cartels on behest of the Mexican cartels and on behalf of China, ultimately testing new mixtures, new concoctions on the homeless in San Francisco to see how the drug would impact the rest of the country. So you hear about psychotic episodes, explosions. I call back home to my foster mother, and there's not a single phone call once a week that she doesn't have another story. And it's horrible. And what? Nothing. Nothing. I invited a friend who's a Fairfax County police officer. His bosses didn't let him come because I wanted you to hear a story at the grassroots, right here, next door to Washington, D.C. So the number of deaths is now much lower than it was overdoses. That was 2 years ago. That's because the cops are equipped with epidurals. And that is the only reason. Not because magically the supply has decreased of fentanyl. No. So he says, just look at the statistics and listen to our stories, which cannot be told in public because, let's just say, the officers are discouraged. It's horrible. And it hits everyone across the board. Not just inner city, not just flyover country, West Virginia. Everyone. Because fentanyl is getting more and more potent, the kids start experimenting with it. And that's the grassroots view. And we need to amplify so-called human interest stories because they may be a way to awaken the electorate, to appeal to the American people so they would breathe down the necks of their elected officials. It's a tragedy. Well, I remember Nancy Reagan telling us about that. It has changed for the worse. So something will have to give. In China, it took 100 years and essentially a communist dictatorship to change slow killing of the Chinese into mass murder by Mao Zedong. We don't want a remedy like that, obviously. We would like our remedy that's compatible with our values that we cherish in this country, or at least some of us still do. So, what remedies do I propose? Well, seal the border. Sealing the border would stem the flow. Sealing the border would address many other issues. Number two is we have something, I'm stealing this idea from a friend of mine from DOD who was also forbidden from talking publicly. So We have something called counterterrorism infusion centers in every county in the United States. They're founded by the federal government, so the taxpayer, not state or county. Except they've been idle for the most part. Why? We killed Osama bin Laden. And until there is enough porousness in the border for Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State to regroup in the United States, there isn't much to do for counterterrorism infusion centers. What we can do, however, is to add another plank without drawing on any additional monies, namely retool parts of counterterrorism infusion centers to serve as counter-narcotic centers. That would help in interdiction. Yes, that's seal the border, retool counterterrorism infusion centers into counter-narcotic centers. They overlap in the criminal underworld, including human trafficking, etc., etc. And number 3 is America needs to start sending a serious message. Namely, we should start killing off lieutenants in the cartels. I don't mean the top, because that would create anarchy. But people who work at the middle and lower level, lieutenants, captains of the cartels, operate with impunity, not just in the United States, but also, of course, in Mexico. I mean, these are the guys who not only send in hordes with stash of drugs, they are the ones who can pick any child and rape it, because they think nothing's going to happen to them. Therefore, I say, send a message, bump them off, start bumping them off. I think it's silly when some of our elected officials want to bomb Mexico. No, targeted assassination of murderers, human traffickers, and rapists is just fine. God bless America. Thank you very much.